You know who's worse than people who commit atrocities? The people who justify them. And today we're going to look at a very calm, very kind priest, with a smile, explaining why eternal torture is perfectly compatible with divine love. You know, most people, when they're about to describe something horrifying, at least have the decency to look a little uncomfortable. Father Casey does not. That's either profound spiritual peace or a complete dissociation from what the words actually mean. We're going to find out which one.
While atheists have a number of spurious arguments against religion that are easily dismissed, this is not one of them. This is a legitimate question that we have to be able to reconcile in ourselves. How do we understand God's wrath in the light of a belief that God is all-loving? Put another way, how can punishment, how can hell exist if God is love?
Very generous of him to admit that the idea that billions of people might be tortured forever is a legitimate question. Not a deal breaker, not a crisis, just a little theological puzzle to reconcile in himself. But the problem he raises is actually very simple. How do you reconcile infinite love with infinite torture? Here's one possible solution. You don't. Maybe those two ideas just don't go together. If someone told you, "Don't worry, the doctor is incredibly loving, the screaming from the basement is just part of the treatment plan because they didn't compliment his stethoscope," you wouldn't call that medicine, you'd call the police. And when you try to sell me on this doctor being the very definition of love is an insult to my intelligence and a middle finger to the bare minimum requirements of logical thought. It reaches a level of cognitive dissonance where I honestly have to check if I'm being pranked. But of course, Father Casey isn't going to admit the contradiction is unsolvable. No. He's on a noble quest to reconcile it, which is very moving, very comforting, I'm sure, for the billions of people allegedly roasting in God's eternal barbecue pit. Truly, no hate burns quite like Christian love. It's a very special kind of warmth.
I'm the only Christian in my whole biological family. How do I not despair at the fact that they're all headed to hell as it stands? It's leading me to doubt the goodness of God. I can say a few things that, do I have like the magic bullet that's going to fix this? I doubt it, but maybe I'll say a few things that I think help me. And one of them is just the advice of wait. You don't yet understand the goodness of God in relation to his judgment of sin and his punishment of sinners. You don't yet understand that. But you will. You just have to wait.
Oh yeah, that's the reassurance. You're worried about your son, your mother, your friends suffering forever. Don't worry, just wait until you get to heaven. Eventually you'll understand that their eternal torture is perfectly justified. What a comforting theology. For me, this is all fairy tales. But for these people preaching it, this is supposed to be literally real.
For me, it's actually a really simple question to answer.
Oh good, I was worried. Billions of people in eternal fire, but don't stress. Father Casey's got this.
There's no need for advanced theological degrees or mental gymnastics of interpreting certain words in certain ways. It comes down to remembering one simple fact. God is the source of all goodness. Not God is a good guy like you and me, not God does good things from time to time. God is the source of goodness, the originator of all that is good. God is goodness in God's very self, meaning that anything and everything that is good in this world is good precisely because God has made it such, and it continues to participate in God's goodness.
Okay, but if God is the source of all goodness, then who's the source of all the eternal torture? Because now we have two options. Option 1, eternal torture is good, which would be a fascinating moral discovery. Or option 2, maybe the system isn't quite as perfectly good as advertised. And if that's the case, then the Christian God simply doesn't match the definition we were just given. And that's really the issue here. Philosophically, you can define God as goodness itself, the ground of being, ultimate perfection. The problem starts when you attach that definition to this specific character, the God who allegedly created a universe where most people can suffer forever. At that point, the description and the behavior stop matching. And when the description and the behavior stop matching, usually the problem isn't the behavior, it's the marketing.
A helpful analogy some like to use is to think of God as a power plant.
If the analogy doesn't somehow factor in both torture and eternity, then honestly, it needs to be unplugged.
Anything that is hooked up to its cables and receives electricity can work. The lights illuminate, the Wi-Fi sends out its signal. But these things are never independent of that power. You can't decide that you're just not going to pay your electric bill and go home and watch Netflix in peace on your own. As soon as the cables are disconnected, the power shuts off.
Sure. Except in your analogy, the power shutting off just means your Netflix stops loading. In theology, it means screaming forever in infinite agony. Slight difference.
If there's something good about us, something that we like and are proud of, something that brings us joy, it exists because, and only because, God created and dwells in us. And so, what would happen if we said no to that? We said, no, I don't want that, thank you. I don't want your goodness. I'd prefer to follow my own path and think of myself first.
Said no one ever. If we know anything about human behavior, it's that no one in their right mind would reject eternal happiness and perfect joy, and instead choose eternal fire. This is not a real person. This is a scarecrow, a philosophical boogeyman invented so the torture can be blamed on the victim. Also, isn't it funny, not cute funny, but actually funny, how unbelievers are being framed as cold, selfish, and self-centered, just for saying, no thank you? Meanwhile, the being doing the punishing demands eternal praise, absolute loyalty, unquestioning devotion, and roasts anyone who doesn't fall in line. And we're the self-centered ones?
Well, I think the same thing that happens when we say that to our electric company. We get cut off.
Such dishonesty. We get cut off. Is that what God is doing? I've been cut off from the electric company. I lit some candles. It was romantic. I called them the next morning, paid the bill, problem solved. Here's a more accurate analogy. The electric company is God, and if you don't accept his service, he will personally throw you into a furnace built by his own hands, designed to exact specifications, where you will scream forever without dying. End of story. So please, stop making analogies that make hell sound like a billing dispute. They keep coming up with analogies because the real thing is indefensible, so analogies water the issue down into something that's obviously not the same thing.
The beauty of God's love for us is that he respects our free will. God doesn't want automated cyborgs that are programmed for perfect obedience. He wants free-thinking, free-loving beings that have a choice. Choice to love and choice to walk away. God created us and gives us life, but he does not make us love him.
There are a lot of problems with what he just said, but the deeper one is this. Fine. God wants free beings that accept his love by their own choice. Great, beautiful. I'm genuinely happy for him. But here's the main question. What about the people who say, no thank you? Separation from God is one thing. If the story ended there, we could at least talk about it. But that's not the doctrine being preached. In this case, God doesn't just allow separation. He makes sure that separation is so agonizing, so unrelenting, so unimaginably terrible, that you will spend every moment of eternity wishing you had chosen differently. And that completely destroys the idea that this is about love or freedom. It's simply pure evil. Father Casey, with all due respect, if this is your God's idea of respecting free will, then I think the cyborgs had it better. At least they wouldn't be on fire. But go on, finish the sentence.
That decision is up to us. But that decision is not without consequences.
And there we go. Consequences. And we all know what God's forever consequences actually mean.
If we choose to deny him, the source of goodness, then the logical conclusion is that he won't make us accept goodness. He'll take it back because we clearly don't want it. And so think about what that looks like.
Again, this idea only works if you imagine a completely unrealistic human being. No rational person, not one, not ever, would knowingly reject infinite love, infinite peace, infinite happiness in exchange for infinite consequences. If you believe people would calmly choose that, then you already believe in a fairy tale. And if God is truly the source of all goodness, not just a good guy, but goodness itself, as Father Casey keeps insisting, then a truly good being doesn't take back goodness the moment you disappoint him. Much like a caring parent dealing with a confused child.
For a thought experiment, think about all the good things about yourself. Your generosity, sense of humor, friendliness, good looks, wisdom, imagination, whatever it is that you like about yourself. Now imagine yourself without any of those things. You decide to cut yourself off from the goodness grid. What are you left with? You're left with jealousy, anger, anxiety, selfishness, greed, and a host of other deformed attributes. You'd be left with a shadow of yourself, consumed entirely inward, hating everything and everyone, including yourself. For how could you not? There's no more goodness in you, no more presence of God animating your soul. All that's left is not goodness.
Which would make you evil or a difficult person, not a torture victim. Rejecting goodness is one thing, but
Good looks, wisdom, imagination.
Are you telling me that in hell, people lose their good looks? And who would reject creativity? Those aren't moral choices. Those aren't things you opt out of. And here's an even bigger question. If God is taking everything back because we rejected it, then why not take back consciousness or existence itself? Because if God truly removed everything he gave us, the conversation would end immediately. There would be nothing left to experience anything at all. Which means even in this explanation, God isn't actually taking everything back. He's just leaving enough behind for people to continue suffering.
Hell is not something inflicted on us by God. It's not a punishment or direct result of God's wrath. As Lewis puts it, hell is locked from the inside. People exist there because they want nothing to do with God, and so God honors that decision.
That has to be one of the most creative rewrites of a torture manual I've ever heard. Because suddenly hell doesn't sound so bad anymore. Apparently it's just a place people freely choose to stay in. If you like it, you stay. If you don't, well, I guess you just open the door and leave.
I think it's enough to hate someone just, and want them to just burn in hell for the rest of their eternity.
Yeah,
Okay.
to suffer, yeah.
Okay, cool. I would agree with you if they are unrepentant.